Ishikawa, a coastal prefecture known for its rugged coastline, hot springs, and traditional villages, lies in one of the most seismically active zones on Earth. Imagine driving down a quiet street and suddenly, the earth rips open. This dashcam footage captures the terrifying moment a 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck Japan, turning an ordinary afternoon into a scene of utter chaos. We'll examine the earthquake's impact and discuss important safety tips for surviving these natural disasters. At precisely 7:38 a.m. on May 5, 2024, disaster struck. Seismic waves rippled outward from a depth of approximately 14 kilometers. Towns and villages near the epicenter experienced violent shaking, with buildings crumbling, roads fracturing, and panic sweeping the populace. Coastal regions bore the brunt, with sudden uplift altering the shoreline by 4 meters in some areas, exposing vast tracts of seabed. In mere seconds, the very foundation of this peaceful city is ripped apart. Roads, once solid and reliable, are torn asunder. Traditional wooden houses in Ishikawa, Japan, represent a unique cultural heritage and architectural style. However, their design and construction methods make them particularly vulnerable to earthquakes. These houses were often built without modern seismic considerations, relying on techniques suitable for earlier times but inadequate given current understanding of earthquake safety. Key structural issues, weak foundations, and the deterioration of materials over time all contribute to their vulnerability. Earthquakes can strike without warning, and knowing how to react in those critical moments can be the difference between life and death. Let's break down essential survival tips for different scenarios during an earthquake. If you're indoors, remember the rule: drop, cover, and hold on. Drop to the ground to prevent being knocked over. Cover your head and neck under sturdy furniture like a table, and hold on tightly to avoid shifting as the ground shakes. Avoid standing near windows, mirrors, or heavy objects that might fall. If you're outdoors, move to an open space away from buildings, power lines, and trees. These structures are prone to collapse or falling debris. Stay grounded and avoid areas with overhead hazards. If you're driving, pull over safely to a clear area. Stay inside the car and avoid bridges, tunnels, or overpasses that could collapse. Once the shaking stops, proceed cautiously, watching for road damage. If you're near the coastline, immediately head to higher ground. Earthquakes near coastal areas can trigger tsunamis, and the best defense is swift evacuation to elevated terrain. Alright, after the shaking stops, the first thing you gotta do is make sure you and everyone around you are okay. Check yourself for injuries. If you're good, then see if anyone else needs help. First aid is great if you can do it safely, but remember, your safety comes first. Stay clear of any damaged buildings or anything that looks like it might fall, and if you smell gas or see downed power lines, get away from there, fast. Cell service can be spotty after a quake, so texting is usually more reliable than calling if you need to reach family and friends. One last thing, be prepared for aftershocks. They can hit anytime, even days or weeks later, so stay alert and be ready to drop, cover, and hold on if you feel another tremor. Taiwan, nestled along the Pacific Ring of Fire, is no stranger to seismic activity. This earthquake, measuring 7.8 on the Richter scale, struck on March 16, 2024, with its epicenter near Hualien County. The tectonic collision sent shockwaves rippling across the island, creating scenes of destruction that rivaled the worst disasters in its history. At precisely 9:42 a.m., everything changed. Residents of Hualien described it as a roar from deep within the earth, a sound that seemed to announce the apocalypse. Entire streets buckled and cracked open, buildings crumbled like sandcastles, and landslides turned highways into death traps. Years ago, I experienced something similar firsthand, and trust me, the feeling of crawling out from under a desk and realizing you're still alive is absolutely overwhelming. As I stepped out of the house I was renting, the chaos hit me like a wave, the blaring alarms, deafening noises, and the choking smell of smoke all combined into a surreal and paralyzing moment. I froze in place, unable to move until a friend literally shouted in my face, snapping me back to reality and pushing me to seek help. Psychologists say that 80 to 90% of people fail to react quickly or rationally during disasters. It's not about intelligence. No matter how sharp someone is, they're not necessarily better equipped to respond than anyone else. What happens is a phenomenon called brain fog, where fear essentially paralyzes rational thought. When fear takes over, the brain almost shuts down, the body floods with adrenaline, muscles tense, and the cerebellum sends signals to the body to freeze. This freeze response is an ancient survival instinct, shared by many animals, acting as a last-ditch effort to avoid detection by predators. It's fascinating to think how deeply ingrained these survival mechanisms are, even in modern humans. Taiwan's no stranger to earthquakes, but this one exposed vulnerabilities even in their advanced systems. Taiwan's earthquake early warning system gave people a precious few seconds, maybe 10, just enough time to brace themselves, and within hours, helicopters and drones were in the air, pinpointing where people needed help. Think of it like a high-tech search and rescue operation getting underway almost immediately. While earthquake-resistant buildings in the cities mostly held up, the countryside wasn't so lucky. Those traditional wooden houses, they really took a beating. This is where AI came in handy, analyzing satellite images to figure out which areas were hit hardest and needed help fast. But here's what really impressed me: the community spirit. Schools became shelters, food stalls handed out free meals, and in Hualien, volunteers made sure even the most remote villages got what they needed. It was neighbors helping neighbors, a real show of Taiwanese grit. The damage, though, was severe. 19 people lost their lives, and over 1,000 were injured. Buildings were destroyed, highways were blocked by landslides, and even those high-tech semiconductor factories, the ones that make the chips that power our phones and computers, took a hit, disrupting global tech production. Farmlands were buried under landslides, wiping out crops, and the total economic damage, estimated to be over $15 billion. So, even with advanced preparation, the power of nature left its mark. The February 2023 Turkey-Syria earthquake stands as a stark reminder of the devastating power of nature, compounded by human vulnerabilities and political complexities. The 7.8 magnitude quake, followed by a nearly as powerful 7.7 aftershock, flattened a region the size of Germany, leaving a trail of destruction across southern Turkey and northern Syria. Over 200,000 buildings, including vital infrastructure like hospitals and schools, crumbled, resulting in a staggering financial toll, exceeding $163 billion. Tragically, the death toll surpassed 59,000, with over 120,000 injured and 1.5 million left homeless.
Evet, bina yıkılıyor şu anda. Bir bina daha yıkıldı, evet, yan tarafında. Arama kurtarma ekipleri.
Already ravaged by years of civil war, Syria faced exacerbated challenges. Makeshift shelters and medical centers were destroyed, leaving millions even more vulnerable, while limited access and international sanctions hampered aid delivery. Even in Turkey, where a massive rescue operation involving 60,000 personnel and substantial global aid was swiftly launched, the sheer scale of the disaster and the collapse of buildings, many failing to meet modern seismic standards, exposed critical gaps in preparedness and building code enforcement. This catastrophic event laid bare the fragile state of governance and disaster preparedness in the region. In Turkey, it sparked renewed scrutiny of urban planning practices and corruption within the construction industry. In Syria, the quake tragically magnified the humanitarian crisis, as aid organizations struggle to navigate the complexities of delivering aid across contested territories. Ultimately, the Turkey-Syria earthquake underscores a critical lesson. While we cannot prevent earthquakes, we can mitigate their devastating impact through responsible urban planning, robust international aid frameworks, and a commitment to community education and preparedness. This disaster serves as a somber call to action, urging a shift towards a future where buildings stand strong, aid flows freely, and communities are empowered to face the inevitable tremors of our planet. Papua New Guinea, with its lush rainforests, towering mountains, and crystal-clear waters, is often seen as a paradise on Earth, yet beneath this serene facade lies a volatile tectonic landscape. On March 24, 2024, this underlying force made itself known once again when a powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake struck, leaving devastation in its wake. Even before the disaster, Papua New Guinea was living on the edge, situated along the infamous Ring of Fire in the Pacific. This is a region where earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis are as frequent as rainstorms. However, the 2024 earthquake was more than a tremor. It was a profound blow to a nation already grappling with economic inequality, fragile infrastructure, and environmental exploitation. The quake's epicenter was located in East Sepik Province, an area celebrated for its cultural richness and biodiversity, yet, in an instant, this beauty turned to chaos. Roads fractured, bridges collapsed, and thousands of homes were reduced to rubble. The sight of panicked villagers fleeing in the dead of night, their paths illuminated only by dim flashlights, painted a haunting image of despair. Rescue efforts were immediately underway, but the nation's rugged terrain and the sheer scale of destruction posed formidable challenges. Landslides blocked access to remote villages, leaving entire communities stranded. Makeshift shelters and inadequately supplied hospitals struggled to meet the overwhelming need for medical care. The earthquake's devastation extended beyond human lives to the natural world. Landslides obliterated critical habitats, polluted waterways, and threatened the survival of countless rare species. The ecological impact of this disaster added another layer of tragedy to an already dire situation. Recovery has been slow and fraught with obstacles. Roads to East Sepik were destroyed, key bridges rendered unusable, and aid shipments faced extreme delays. What became glaringly evident was the lack of disaster preparedness. Early warning systems were non-existent, building codes to withstand earthquakes were absent, and local authorities lacked the resources and training to handle such a crisis effectively. This earthquake serves as a wake-up call. While natural disasters cannot be entirely avoided, their impacts can be mitigated through better preparation. Investing in earthquake-resistant infrastructure, implementing early warning systems, and equipping communities with training to respond to emergencies are essential steps. Cuba's been having a really tough time lately, one of the worst economic crises in decades. Actually, think sky-high inflation, bare shelves at the grocery store, no medicine at the pharmacy, and gas stations running dry. People are struggling to get by, dealing with constant power cuts, water shortages, and a growing black market just to find basic necessities. In rural areas, it's even worse, with theft and insecurity adding to the strain. This economic hardship is a mix of internal problems and external pressures. Government reforms meant to fix the currency backfired and actually made inflation worse. And then there are the crippling U.S. sanctions that make it almost impossible for Cuba to import goods, attract investment, or get back on its feet. People are frustrated, and understandably so, They're looking for help wherever they can find it, often turning to their churches and community leaders for support. Then, in 2024, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake hit eastern Cuba, near Pilon. It was like a punch to the gut for a country already on its knees. The damage was extensive: cracked docks, buckled concrete, homes, schools, and hospitals in ruins. Over 14,000 people lost power, and the aftershocks, over 300 of them, kept everyone on edge. Imagine living through that, quake after quake, on top of everything else they were dealing with. Though, thankfully, no one was killed, there were injuries, and the emotional trauma was significant. Think about families scrambling for safety, the fear in children's eyes. It's something that doesn't just go away when the shaking stops. And to make matters worse, the earthquake hit a region already struggling to recover from hurricanes and flooding earlier that year. The damaged port at Pilon is a real blow to trade and local businesses. Cuba's response efforts, though swift, were hampered by limited resources. Residents were urged to stay in open spaces or lower levels of buildings. But for a country already grappling with economic hardship, rebuilding feels like an uphill battle. This earthquake isn't just a natural disaster, it's a harsh reminder of the fragility of infrastructure and the resilience of people facing crisis after crisis. The scars on the landscape will heal in time, but the scars on the collective psyche of these communities, those will take much longer. If nothing else, this event underscores the urgent need for improved seismic preparedness in vulnerable regions.